So, at the age of 7, I was finally removed. And to this day, I've never seen my mom after that. So from 7 to 10, I was put in more foster homes and RTC. Some of the coolest foster parents I've had, allowed me to have friends come over and they were like, hey, are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Then there were some like, what's your mom and dad do? What are you doing over here? And these are my friends. Why are you should be happy that I have friends. And that's why most of the time I acted out, because I wasn't allowed to be me. I wasn't allowed to, interact with kids.
So did you live in homes by yourself? Were you were the only kid?
Where?
In foster homes. Did you
Oh, no. Hey, which brings me to a story. Like, I remember like a couple of stories. One of the foster kids, he had like a fake eye, and he was a little younger than me. And it's funny because it's so funny because he would take his eye out at night and he was supposed to put it in like a jar with like cleaner. He had a glass eye or whatever. Anyways, he would take it out and he would put it on my side of the nightstand. And then, like, in the morning, I just seen this, like, glass eye looking at me like he was looking at me, And so I'd sit up, I'd wipe my face off, and I'd be like, dude, you're going to get me in trouble because he had disabilities, But at the end of the day, I think he knew what he was doing. This kept happening and happening and happening and happening. And, like, he used to get me in trouble. He would be like, watch this, and he'd walk out of the door, come back in, and he'd stand there and grunt. He was basically defecating on himself, and then he would cry. And then the foster parents would come in and yell at me because I allowed him to do that. And he would turn around and smile, that he got me in trouble. But like, you have to think, like, most of the foster families that I lived in were certified to take on special needs kids. There were on psychotropic drugs that were overprescribed, or some of them even really needed it, So from 7 to 10.
Hard when you didn't, to be in a situation where if someone would have evaluated you, they might have realized that you really didn't need that.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I was adopted that they actually had someone that wasn't state certified or state hired to put this label on me. And they put all these little things on my head. I eat EEKG, and like I wasn't allowed to sleep, for so many hours. I had to stay awake. And then when I went there, I was allowed to sleep, so I was relaxed, whatever. So my adoptive mom and dad had all this testing done on me, and then they finally realized like everything's fine. I don't need these meds. Why is he even on the meds? So instead of taking me straight off, they shaved me off of. A lot of kids, what happens is that they've been prescribed these drugs their whole life, and they turn 18 or they age out, and they lose their Medicaid, they lose their housing, they lose everything, and they're just straight taken off of whatever they were on. And it just spirals out of control in their head. So what do they turn to? They turn to street drugs to compensate for that need, for that.
You'd almost call it a high, but it's not really a high as much as, they really are reliant on it.
Right. Like Adderall.
Right.
What happens when you take Adderall and you don't need it? You speed up.
Yeah.
What happens when you take Ritalin? What happens when you take Ritalin? You don't really need it. It speeds you up. So now you've been taking it for all these years because the state diagnosed you with these problems, and now you're not able to go get what you need as far as Ritalin or Adderall. So what do? You turn to meth. You try to find somebody that's selling these drugs on the street so you can get by, so you're not feeling the way you do. To be taken off of Adderall after being taking it for so many years, or Ritalin after being taking it for so many years, to just be taken straight off, like, it's a bad, downward spiral.
And is that what happened to you, or you said they weaned you?
Yeah, my adopted parents just shaved me off. Like, they scraped a couple dustings off of the pill, because they were warned, if you take them off or you just go half and, just do them like that. No, you got to do it by shavings. You gotta milligram them. You know what I mean? You gotta dust it off. So, getting into the adoption,
how did you meet them? Like, did somebody ask you what you were looking for in an adoptive home, or?
No.
Okay.
No. We were informed, my sister and I, which I didn't even know I had. My sister and I were put on a TV show called Wednesday's Child by ABC.
Okay.
Her name was Michelle Gallion, and she was a wonderful lady. We were the only kids that ever went to her house
Okay.
on the show, and she was cool. It was around Halloween, and we're carving pumpkins, and um, we get put on the show, and then a couple calls. He had been through a divorce previously, and then she had been through a divorce previously, which makes me wonder, like now that I'm older, like which I know children's services didn't do their job and investigated like why the divorce even happened. Why who's I don't really want to say whose fault it was for the divorce or but was he abusive? Was he verbally abusive? Or was he at the receiving end of the abuse? Or was she at the receiving end of the abuse? Okay, come to find out when I got older, they both were on the receiving end of control and verbal abuse in their divorce. So hold on, wait. You've got two educated people in a house coming together, haven't been married but a year. Not They weren't even married when they saw that program.
Wow.
You have two people coming from two prior divorces meeting together, wanting to adopt a kid because the woman can't have babies. So, is it going to be a compromisable relationship, or is someone going to try to control the relationship? Come to find out, he was really submissive and she was really controlling, and that wasn't a good mix, just for the simple fact that everything that he did, even 6 months, 7 months, 8 months into the relationship, he couldn't even scratch his head at the table without her complaining that dandruff flakes
Oh, wow. Okay.
were in the air.
Okay.
Everything that he did caused her to get hives, to break out, and she turned really red, which she didn't. I think she was just a hypochondriac that wanted attention that he wasn't able to give her. And I think my undiagnosed PTSD kicked in and was like, I can't I can't take it. I don't like these people right off the
You're only
bat.
10, right? You're 10?
10, 11 years old. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Like, this isn't the way that this is supposed to be going. You know what I mean? Like,
Of all the people who watch this show, you chose them?
right. Well, they had money, and growing up in foster care, you look at that, with someone with some money and like, yeah, all right, they have boats and they have, houses in this state and houses in this state. And you're like, all right, right, this will work. You know what I mean? I'm going to get spoiled, but it wasn't the case. Like, I dressed better in foster care than I did living with them, because I know in foster care that every every winter, every spring, every fall, school started, I would get clothing vouchers for brand new stuff I wanted, But with them, it was all hand me down stuff like shoes from Odd Lots.
Weird. That is really weird that they had all of that stuff. They had no children of their own.
They don't care. They didn't really care how they looked. They didn't really care about anything except how, I guess, prevalent they were in the community. Because they held decent job, very good jobs, very good. So he would go out of town a lot. He'd go to China and Australia and Europe, and it was business for his company. About a year and a half after living with him, my sister had been told constantly not to wear makeup. And one morning, my sister thought that she was in bed and wasn't going to get up by the time that we went out the door to the bus stop. Sure enough, she comes out and catches my sister putting on makeup, goes in the bathroom, closes the door and locks it behind her, and she beat my sister bad. I mean, bad. I'm laying in my water bed. I'm like, I'm hearing glass shatter and a whole bunch of ruckus in the bathroom because my closet's like right next to the bathroom, you know, and the door's locked, and it was one of those ones you can turn with your finger, you know. So I go in there and I witnessed something that I never thought that I'd see happen to any of my family members besides me. And I took action. The husband didn't like the action and came running up the stairs with a cutting board. They both took me in the bedroom and they beat me. They beat me. Um, it got so bad that um, I was stabbed on the back side of my back, close to my kidneys, and he took her into the master bedroom, and that was my getaway. I knew what I had to do. I had to go get some towels and take my sister to the bus stop. And when we got to the school, she ended up going to the ER, and I stayed at the school. And this is what gets me to this day. When I get to the school, all these people were there. All these people were there. And my math teacher ended up taking me in. Her science teacher ended up taking her in because they heard, you know, what happened that day when my adoptive mom and dad came to get me. Well, when my adoptive mom came to get me, she was informed that she would not be picking me up by the sheriff's department. To this day, I still don't I don't understand why no charges were filed. I just don't. I have no clue on why charges weren't filed.
You were 13 at the time? About 13?
No, I'm like 12. I'm in 8th grade.
Okay.
I'm in 8th grade, you know.
Yeah. And was your sister older or younger?
I'm in 7th grade.
Okay. So you're 12 or 13.
Yeah, I'm in 7th grade. She was in 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like, so no, like there was no accountability. They weren't held accountable for what they did.
And you guys had to go to the ER and
We were removed. Listen, my sister was removed permanently. That there was a removal and that there was child abuse. Period.
yeah.
And no accountability. They
just went on with their life like nothing happened.
Right. They turn around. They remove my sister permanently, put her in a group home in Delaware, Ohio. They tell my math teacher that she either has to give us up or give me up or adopt me. So I had to sit down at this nice dinner table at this nice place that I was. She came in every night. She sat on the bed. You know, she told me goodnight. She was cool. She was the coolest person I ever lived with. She was the sweetest lady I ever even met. But she had to sit me down at that table and she told me, Scott, they're telling me either I have to give you up or adopt you. And I just can't adopt you. So it's pain and hurt after hurt after hurt. You know what I mean? It's just, even to this day,
yeah.
You know, I get so emotional over it because nobody just got me. You know, it just seemed like nobody cared.
And do you think that that's what her issue was, or do you think it was just?
It was just all the political stuff that was going on with them spreading lies that she was in some cult, you know, that molested kids and did all this other stuff. But you have to understand that these people, my adopted mom and dad, my adopted parent, were very prevalent in the community. Their attorney that they retained used to be a mayor. He stopped, you know, he resigned from being a mayor and went into family law. This is.
You mean their attorney for adopting you? That's what you mean?
No. Their attorney for the abuse.
Okay.
There were court hearings about this abuse.
Okay, because you had said that they got away scot-free. So you mean
they did.
They were not found guilty, but they did.
Not one CASA person was there. Not when I was removed from my math teacher's house. You know where they put me? Take a guess.
Back to the centers.
Where? What are they called?
The RTC.
Boom. That's where they put me.
So you were beaten and then you were taken to the RTC. So I don't understand how you could have, I mean, you were defending your sibling. First off, why did they split you and your sibling up? You know, why did your sibling go into a group home? when all she did was put on makeup.
Guess where they put me after the RTC, and there was never any representative from Children's Services that came and talked to me while their attorney was present. Not once. Not once.
Was after the RTCs when you hit the streets? Is that what happened?
No.
No. Okay.
They put me right back with my abuser. They put me right back with the adopted parent.
But okay, so they were not only not found guilty, but they were cleared, and it was kind of wiped under the.
And it was okay for me to return back to that environment, even after my case file screamed, "Don't do this. Don't do it."
And how about you? Did you scream,
don't do this to this kid?
Did you scream, "Don't do this," or were you under the impression that it was going to be better?
I was under the impression that it was going to be better.
Because you always hope, right?
Look at what I had. Look at what I had at their house. I had a waterbed. I had a top of the line refrigerator, with nice dishes and nice neighbors and nice lawn, compared to sleeping on a concrete slab with a mat eating off of a metal tray. How can I weigh it? It's kind of looking like this, it's kind of, and when I went back, it was just pure hate, I guess you could say. It was pure hate. I ran away all the time.
It was pure hate on their part, pure hate on your part, both?
Both. It was both.
So like the second you walked in, you knew it wasn't going to change?
Children's Services actually said, you either need to get a psychologist or you can go through one of ours. So you know what they did? They went and got one of theirs. And I used to tell them, hey, man, the yelling's still going on. They're still putting their hands on me. They're still, being verbally abusive and physical with me. They're locking me in the room, forcing me to stay in there. And he's like, oh, here. Let's play Battle of Chess on my laptop. What do you mean? You're not listening to me, dude. Like, I'm being abused. Like, I'm trying to tell you. But, his reports were going back to Children's Services like everything's okay. But the funny thing is when I went back, they never had any of their same friends because all their friends knew what they had done. They were exposed, so we're not going to get into the politics of the new friends that they had, but basically I was made out to be the liar. I was made out to be the thief. I was made out to be the abuser, and this was all the works of my adopted mom. This is all the works of, the psychological. When they found out that they couldn't when they couldn't physically abuse me, it turns to the psychological. And when you're dealing with only someone that's intelligent, that has, majors in this type of stuff and communications and so forth and so on, you're potentially dealing with somebody that is highly convincing amongst her new friends to the point to where they're not even controlling their own life. It's brainwashing, so it's funny because I wasn't allowed to go to public school anymore. Obviously, they put me in private school. That didn't turn out too well. I mean, at the age of 10, I'm 13. I'm 13, 14 now. That didn't turn out. That didn't turn out too good. Yeah, I got expelled. And then they finally decided to put me in homeschool. They both sat me down and they said, hey, if you don't want to learn, because I told them, I said, you keep me here with her, it's going to be all bad. It's going to be all bad. Like, you guys took away the only family I had, and you abused me. You treated me the same way I've been treated my whole life. Like, how dare you? How dare you? You were supposed to make my life better. Don't adopt kids and like abuse them after a year and a half they're living there because someone wants to decide to put on makeup, or that they have learning disabilities, which, hey, I was bounced around so much. Like, it's not my fault that I didn't know how to read or write at the age of 10 or 11. Like, I didn't even know how to spell my own name. It's not my fault, so don't blame me. But I wasn't allowed to have friends because all they did was just cram education in me. That's all they knew, So anyways, I go back. It gets to the point that they realize that I'm not taking any, excuse my language, sorry if I offend anybody who's listening, but after they realized I wasn't on, taking the bullshit, they kind of gave up. they gave up on trying to make me who they wanted me to be, even though it was a lost cause from the beginning. You know, you know, it
What made it a lost cause? I mean, if had they been what you needed, do you think that you would have risen to what they wanted? Do you think it would have been more of a give and take if they would have said, have a sleepover, let's take your friends camping, let's do these
yeah,
kinds
because it would have been a stable place. Like it would have been a stable place for me, and that's all I longed for growing up was a stable place. A mom and a dad that was cool. That understood. Like I'm 42. But I'm still up to date on like trends and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like I try to stay up to date on trends. Like I wear bright Nike Air Maxes and everything I have is Air Max. To me, it's about first impression, what someone actually thinks of you when they first see you. And it's always been like that. When as a foster youth ever been taken out shopping besides somewhere that children's services hands the foster parent a voucher for? Like foster parents don't really like when I was growing up with foster kids, they don't take the foster kids out and spend their own money on the foster kids. No, that never happened. It was always, oh, don't worry about it. You'll get a voucher here soon. It'll be in the mail. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Or we can go to children's services and pick up your voucher.
Did you ever live in homes with where they had biological kids?
Yeah, my last one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, before I got adopted, they were pretty cool. Well, they were pretty cool. They had four-wheelers, and they'd ride them up and down the sidewalk. And that's how this finger got bent. You see it? I call it because I guess he was a construction worker. He was a contractor, whatever. And his company got the first ever like Bobcat in the state of Ohio, and he brought it to the house, and he's zero turning with it and lifting the thing. So I hop in there, and the gate swings open. So anyways, I had my finger on the edge like this, and it got smashed inside the door when I closed it. Like I didn't realize that. I said, so he runs up and opens up the door real quick, and that finger's been permanently like that. So this finger is a reminder of the coolest foster family I've ever lived with. So I'm happy about
that. That's awesome. I'm glad that you have a happy experience. It makes me like I told you before, we were foster parents, and we would never wait. If our son needs shoes, then whoever needs shoes in the house gets them, or whoever it is, when they need something, they get it. Or if I'm shopping and something's adorable, I'm gonna pick it up for them.
I mean, but there's a time and place for for responsibility and to work for what you want, and I understand that, and that should be taught, and that's a lot of things that we'll get into that. Because I'm anxious to talk about
moving forward.
Right.
Forward, moving forward.
Right.
Okay. All right. So yeah, let's. I just want to wrap up a few things on this. Have you seen your sister since? Is she?
Yeah, I found her. Like when I was running away and stuff, I found her. I found her while she was in the group home. Yeah.
Is she doing well now?
She does good for herself, I guess you could say, but her choice and guys isn't up to my part. I expect a little bit more out of my sister, but hey, if she's happy, I love it.
That's awesome. I'm just glad to know that she is healthy and able to be productive regardless of the crap that you guys have been through. All right, so let's talk about after. What was next after adoption did not work out?
I ran away. I ran the street, and I got involved with a group of guys. I grew up on Ohio State campus, basically. When I turned 13, I started running away, and when you grow up in a place like that, a lot of money, a lot of parents' money, and that's how I looked at it at the time. I got involved with a few people. And I never was the guy that wanted to pick out of dumpsters or trash cans or sleep on the street. I always had that that hustling mentality, I guess you could say, to get what I want. And I never was involved in any human trafficking business. Never did anything regarding nothing sexual, you know. But at the end of the day, I not only have one prison number, not only have two prison numbers, I have three prison numbers. On the last prison number, I did 14 years here in Ohio, and it wasn't any like it wasn't against anybody like a woman or a child. While I was in prison, I worked out a lot. I ate a lot.
You
I
said it.
came home.
I'm sorry. You said it wasn't against a woman or a child. Was it again? Was it physical violence?
Um, there was it's called a RICO Act. A RICO Act, it varies. I necessarily don't have to be the principal offender. I could be charged with other crimes that other people do as a principal offender. So say somebody goes out that's involved with my group and they commit a robbery. I'm tied into that group. I'm automatically going to get charged with that, even though my role was something else, but they can all tie us into that. I played my part,
Okay.
and I'm not happy about it. I'm not at all happy about the way that I had to survive, I guess you could say.
Right.
Like I said, I did 14 years, mandatory day for day, no early release. I'm on 5 years parole, mandatory. No early get off. My earliest release date for parole is 2022. So I still have a few years. I was released in March 2017.
And like, how have you kept your nose clean, so to speak? Right.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like in 2010, I had a whole like I realized like a lot about life. I I had to understand the difference between friends, true friends, acquaintances, and associates. I had to basically turn myself inside out and find my morals and my values because I guess you could say I was lost, you know. So in 2010, I came in from the yard and I just got done working out. I grabbed me a thing of tuna, opened it up. I'm sitting on my bunk and I hear this lady and she's like, hey, she's a congressional like a congressional speaker for foster care, like one of the main people, you know. And she's like, hey, you know, foster care is out of control and we can't fix it. And it just made me mad. Like, why can't you fix it? You know, what's so hard? What's so hard about giving kids understanding and love? Like, what's so hard about that? You know, and then later on I figured out that, you know, most of these people aren't from the foster care system, so they don't know how foster kids actually think. They don't know how foster kids actually work. You know, no wonder you can't fix it. You know, you have no clue on even beginning to understand where the fixing starts, right? So the next movie that I saw on PBS was I'm sitting on my bed, like I'm still sweating. I stink. My cellie comes in like, bro, you need to get in the shower. I'm like, give me a minute. You know, this is what I'm doing right now. That's when I made him sit down and watch what I was watching. And he was like, what do you mean you don't have access to your birth certificate or your adoption records and stuff like that? And I'm like, no, bro. Like, and he's like, well, what do you mean you don't have access to your records? I'm like, you don't. Like, anything that happened to you, it's sealed, dude. Like, you don't get that information. He's like, man, that's just wrong. I'm like, I know, tell me. So I'm like, wait a minute. I'm at a correctional institution where there's a lot of programming, like a lot of programs get introduced at this institution. And I get to look into um how many former foster youth are incarcerated. And like I come across the 2005 Midwest study and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, that's crazy. So I I start ordering books like till the end of June, and like all these other books, and I start reading, and like they're all saying the same thing, that the foster care and criminal justice systems, like they feed and fuel each other. Like they're two ballooning bureaucracies that are out of control. And I'm like, you know so I'm starting to educate myself and educate myself and educate myself. And I'm like, well, if there's such a high percentage of former foster youth incarcerated, I wonder if there's any prison programs that address their needs, respect and mutual respect, self-esteem, and what it's like to move forward with your life, even though you've been through, even the foster kids that had the most loving families. But I also speak for those who have just been through so much, and all they need is just someone to care. You know, someone to say, what, man, I get it. I get it. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault that your mom and dad gave you up. It's not your fault that they abused you. It's not your fault that they sexually molested you. It's not your fault that they abandoned you. It's not, I get it. It's not your fault. Just hear me out, because I understand. So I realized all these statistics of former foster youth incarcerated, not just in Ohio, but nationally. And it broke my heart, man. It broke me down so bad. And then when I found out that 80% of people on death row are from foster care, and there's nobody doing anything about this. There's no program, there's no organization besides the one that I'm working with right now. I don't know if I can say the name or not.
Yeah, absolutely can.
It's We Lift LA. Amazing people, amazing people. So I'm in prison, and I'm realizing that there's no programs nationally that address former foster youth. So you know what I did? I put the brakes on everything that I had ever thought of. And I finally realized that yesterday and tomorrow, they don't exist. So what I did in the past and what I'm doing tomorrow, it doesn't exist. What am I doing right now to combat the foster care to prison pipeline? What am I doing right now to help this pandemic? This is a pandemic. And it hurts. It hurts me to the core.